What's back to the UK and the issue of net zero and driving?
Yes, well, I think I've worked out to 54 days now to the budget, so not long to wait. And it's interesting actually because the government pushing out more to see the social media reaction again. So 2030, petrol, diesel cars will go. And thank you so much to Nick Walker, 72, Mixmaster Mirage, who did this graphic for me and has done lots of graphics that, especially if you come back for extra, you'll see another lovely graphic. Thank you so much to him for this graphic. Because do you remember, he also reminded me, do you remember back in lockup, Cheshire Constabulary and Wiltshire Police, I've just got two examples really of screenshots to tell you that you weren't allowed to drive. Do you remember in lockup? You couldn't travel to exercise. You couldn't take your car out anywhere. Was this one big nudge for what we've got coming up? Because I just want to give you a little bit of very brief history. Back in 2007, there was a road price petition. Now, the pay-as-you-drive road tolls debate really hotted up then, but a huge 1.7 million rejected the plan to charge drivers £1.34 a mile at peak time. Motorists feel really strongly. And they did mention actually that Blair had been caught off guard at the fuel price protests in 2000, which actually brought Britain to a standstill. So is this a shot across the bows? They know that drivers are going to react. Or are they trying to engineer more outrage, more upset for more protests? That I don't know. But if we leap forward to 2019, the RAC were reminding everybody of this outrage and the fact that the public didn't want it. However, in October 2019, MPs didn't seem to have listened, and the RAC said, no, they need to listen to more. We want a national road pricing debate. So the Transport Committee, again in October 2019, decided to kickstart the conversation again for pay per mile. And here we are today in September, in the Telegraph is now reporting that Rachel Reeves is about to hit petrol car drivers with a pay per mile tax. And even the RAC are actually pushing for this. But interestingly, the Express just came out with an article to say that actually many are going to ditch their petrol cars and stop driving completely. And isn't that the aim we're thinking moving forward? In fact, they're predicting a huge 38%, would you believe, are going to ditch their cars. And I just have to say the caveat 15-minute cities, does that ring any bells? So I went to Cinch to see what pay per mile would actually mean. And basically, because electric cars at the moment don't pay any tax or very little, we seem to have taken, or the government say they seem to have taken a hit. So in order to make up the difference and to replace vehicle excise duty, petrol car drivers will have to pay a tax on annual mileage. What could possibly go wrong? But on the next shot, I just want to show you a picture of a camera, because cameras are very important in this. They're going to be using number plate recognition, just like Sadiq Khan uses for ULEZ. So is he thinking about rolling this out in London, perhaps where the infrastructure is? Because we're seeing cameras popping up all over the place, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But I went to fact check, as you do, to see, is Sadiq Khan playing about with this idea? And apparently, no, he's not. He's not thinking about pay per mile. But they put a very interesting caveat in the next slide, which said that fact check can't fact check the future. So basically, anything's on the table, I would say. So let's go and look at the government's end of sale of petrol diesel cars in 2030, because they've taken this historic step, and apparently they've done it through a consultation. And the consultation outcome in the next slide will say that petrol and diesel cars, now it's been brought forward to a ban to 2030, and all new cars and vans will have to be fully zero emission at the tailpipe by 2035. And they include some hybrids, which is interesting. And for that, I'll show you why. But let's just look at EVs, because we've done loads of work on EVs on the column. And the BBC are reporting, is the move to electric cars running out of power? Well, I would say it probably is. And why? Well, the BBC say that it's because we need to buy loads more. In order to hit the climate target, we need 800 million by 2035. And at the moment, we've only got 50 million. So we're well short. And people aren't sure that they're worth it. They don't like electric cars. They say it's a high cost. And most of the electric cars that you see on the roads at the moment are company cars. They're fleet cars who have been given generous tax breaks. And you can see there that even in 2024, Tesla sales are going down. But the cost of an average EV in the USA is $60,000. So they're very highly priced. But what are manufacturers saying? Well, Volvo apparently has turned around and said, no, they're not going to do it. They are going to carry on selling hybrids. So they're not going to get rid of petrol cars completely. They're going to have hybrids. This is going to be interesting to see where this fits in with legislation. But why is electric vehicle apathy forcing car makers to take desperate measures? And they are taking desperate measures. And further on in the article, it says that many distributors actually are going to be closing and motorists are being put off because of the price. But the parity between second-hand market now is starting to narrow. So you can actually get a second-hand EV for the same price as a petrol. But I have to say that if you get a second-hand EV, which is probably 5 years old, that battery is going to be 5 years old, and we'll come on to batteries in a minute. So why have we been looking at EVs for so long? Well, obviously we've been looking at EV fires, haven't we? We've been looking at a huge amount of fires. This is a CE Safety published this in 2022, but it was over the last 5 years, going back to 2017, and they were saying that they're very dangerous, difficult to extinguish the fires, and they've caused serious damage. And we know that already because of previous articles that we've covered on the column. But so far, London, 93 vehicles, they were reporting 78 injuries. It goes on and on forever. If we go on to the next slide too, it talks about huge amounts of call-outs, the London fires caused by electric batteries. And you can see there that the graph screenshot is 43.7% are cars. But surprisingly, I didn't realise mobility scooters are included in this as well. So 3.1% of fires are happening with mobility scooters. When we look at the RAC are talking about batteries, which we know, of course, are the lithium batteries. And they talk further on in the article about the cost of them and how often they need charging. So they say they last 10 to 20 years on average, although I have known people say that they last a lot less. It's £8,000 for a new Tesla battery, although they say those prices are coming down. And not all manufacturers specify a state of health replacement before you're eligible for a replacement. So if you are thinking of buying an electric car, which I'm sure none of you are, you need to check these kind of things. But you know what? Where to go but Jeff Buys Cars. And if you're listening, Jeff Buys Cars, amazing videos you put out. And you've been highlighting that there's been cameras popping up all over the place. I'm sure you've seen them. Wherever you're living, but he's done a lot of videos on cameras and a lot of videos on cars, and this is a little bit of what he had to say about pay per mile.
A government announcement is expected in due course, all right? I was banging on about pay per mile and road user charging 18 months ago. The goal is for them to put the cameras up so that they can switch you off. When they introduce the 15-minute cities, when they introduce all of these neighbourhoods that you're not allowed to leave, if they've got the pay per mile cameras up and active, and if the system is running, it's going to be a lot easier for them to lock you in your house and to prevent you from going anywhere. That's what all of this is about. It's got nothing to do with a black hole in the budget, because they created the black hole in the budget, and anyone with a brain could have predicted that the black hole in the budget was going to happen. So don't incentivize business users into buying electric cars and then pretend that you didn't realize that those business users were then not going to be paying for their fuel and you were going to lose out on the money. They knew all along. They are lying to us time and time again. Understand where these agendas come from. Understand what the end goal is. It's got nothing to do with money and everything to do with you losing your freedom. Miss the camera.
I feel like that too. Thank you so much, Jeff. I thought that was brilliant. But you know what? I picked up Jacob Rees-Mogg talking about his hybrid on GB News. And this is a very short clip of what happened to Jacob Rees-Mogg. Listen carefully. What happened to his hybrid?
Well, now we've got billions of miles of data, global data, that shows that these batteries are not degrading as we've been told. So I drove a Tesla the other day, a 2018 car with 250,000 miles on it, and it was as fresh as paint, and the battery was just doing really, really well. So there is no data to say anywhere that batteries are failing prematurely or causing issues. Your Lexus, obviously,
The battery blew up and it wouldn't move an inch.
I can only apologise.
That's not your personal fault. But you see, I don't disagree particularly with anything you're saying. I'm just thinking the market should decide. And if people want to buy petrol cars, should be allowed to do so.
So his battery blew up. Do I need to say more? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, let's